I'm going to say something that's hard to hear. Black men abandoning Black women is not the tragedy that we were taught to believe that it was. At least that's my hot take. The real tragedy is the role that Black women were forced into as a result of it. Because every system is built with a purpose, not to support us, not to protect us, but to ensure that the system keeps running. Black women were never meant to be the saviors of the system, but somewhere along the way, we were assigned that role. And what makes it worse is we accepted it, not because we wanted to, but because there was no alternative that was offered. So Black women became the backbone, stabilizers. Black women became the emotional infrastructure of communities that were never structurally supported. And that made us strong, resilient, unbreakable. And that was labeled as power. Guys, if you haven't already, go ahead, subscribe to my channel, and let's get into my notes on how the strong Black woman trope actually supports the patriarchy. The strength of Black women has been undeniable, and it has been told that our strength is our greatest power. What if that strength isn't a gift, but a part of a function? What if it kept the system running, and that strength was actually what was supporting it never fixing itself? Because once you know how to be strong, you stop questioning what it is you are carrying. You just start accepting every burden, whether it's yours or not. Because strength in this context isn't about freedom. It's about giving permission to be used. Growing up, I remember being called a strong Black woman was a title that needed to be earned. And at the same time, you had to be it. There was no other options but to grow up and be a strong Black woman, because the only alternative given was collapse. And collapsing, that was not allowed. So you prepare yourself for a weight that hasn't arrived yet, imaginary burdens that you were told to expect. And once you accept that expectation, you become available to carry anything, everything. And you can't tell me that that does not serve the patriarchy. Being a strong Black woman isn't just a stereotype, it's a design. We are taught that it's about who we are, when in reality, it is not. It is about what you can hold. It's about capacity to endure, to absorb, to fix, to carry. And once you define your capacity, you are just to be utilized. Black mothers in a patriarchy abandoned by men aren't just raising children. They are trying to stabilize instability, holding families or communities and systems together. Systems that were never meant to actually hold them. And this labor has been reframed as a virtue, moral superiority, and something to be proud of. But honestly, this is just a distraction, because whether men stayed or left, the system was never designed to produce stability. It was designed to create pressure. Pressure that actually makes us turn inward, to blame each other, to adjust ourselves so that we fit better into their system, instead of questioning the structure itself. Black women became a cautionary tale, the thing that other women, especially white women, were warned not to become. Don't be left because you were too strong. Don't be left because you were too much. And that narrative has had Black women in a chokehold for generations. Let me be clear. Being abandoned in a patriarchy does not create a matriarchy, because in order to lead truly, you have to have power, and power requires autonomy. Whereas what Black women have had is responsibility without true authority, valued for our labor, but not having control over it. We have been influential without any structural backing. None of that equates to a matriarchy. That is just over-functioning inside of a patriarchy. Because even if the Black community has fewer men because the men left, the focus has never changed. We did not build around ourselves. We started building around male absence. How to save the men, how to keep the men, how to prove to ourselves and to the rest of the world that we are worth staying for. Still performing for a gaze that never was interested in our stability. There's this crazy realization that I had that most of our lives are often built around what is missing. Not possibilities, not desire, but what's not there. Be a support or protection that never arrived. How much of our personalities, how much of our identity has been built around compensating for absence? Because a lot of what we describe as strength is just adaptation for lack. But that is not who you are. It is who you become to survive what wasn't provided. You see, the system was never actually meant to fix absence because it relies on all of us to do that. What if the structure depends on you overcompensating for it, on you becoming the solution for a problem that you did not create? Because what if you stopped compensating? What if you stopped trying to fill the gaps? If you stopped organizing your life around what is broken, what would happen? Would you fall apart? Or would you start to realize that what you have been doing and what you have been trying to compensate for was never stable to begin with? Dysfunction isn't scary. What we fear is that our dysfunction will be revealed and that we're not actually holding it all together. I'm sure people hear this and they think, I made choices, I stepped up, I did what needed to be done. But what if it was never a choice at all? What if it's just been positioning and you've just been walking in a role? Because they don't start in adulthood, it starts early. How you are praised for taking on the burdens. Emotionally rewarded when you took on things that people didn't think that you could handle. And before you realize it's happening, it actually has become your identity. And then you go out into the world and you start relationships and you are prepared to carry, to endure, to be relied on. When you have been trained for dysfunction, you always expect it and sometimes you seek it. Instability actually starts to feel unnatural. It feels like something temporary, unreal, something that you need to prepare to lose, if you even recognize it. This is how the system gets us to participate in our own oppression. Through conditioning us to believe that who we became to survive is who we're supposed to be. And the system needs us to stay here because if you stop expecting dysfunction, you stop preparing for it. And that doesn't just change outcomes, it changes patterns. And patterns are what systems rely on. When I reflect on my life as a single mom, how I lived so differently. As a single mother, I realized I raised my son inside something that was very close to a matriarchal structure. Not because it was all women, but because it was child-centered, community-centered, care-centered. We were all different, but we were all aligned. And our children were the priority. I remember the last time I was in the States and I was sitting in the park with who became my oldest son's second mom. And we were watching my current children play with the second generation of this little community that we have. And she leaned in and she asked, who's raising our kids in Italy? And I don't have an answer because I don't have that anymore. I have a husband now. And that contrast is very revealing because the issue was never men. It's the absence of community, the absence of collective responsibility, the absence of a structure that is built around the well-being of children and not the maintenance of patriarchy. So then the real question becomes, why don't we do that on purpose? Why don't we do it strategically? Because what if we refuse any other role? We don't have to fight, not negotiate. Simply refuse. What if Black women stop centering their communities on male lack? Stop building lives around fixing absence. Stop preparing children to survive dysfunction and instead work towards collectively raising them outside of that. It's not about destruction because Black women cannot destroy the patriarchy alone. It's about reorientation because systems do not collapse only through force. Systems collapse when we stop feeding them. And the nuclear family, as a goal, has been one of the most effective traps because it isolates, it limits supports, it concentrates labor, and somehow we call that structure success. I remember asking my oldest son after I partnered with my partner and we had more children, if he ever felt like he was missing something growing up without a father. There is a certain guilt as a single mother, no matter how successful you might be, that people make you feel that you just didn't do enough alone. And he said he had no regrets, that most of the kids that he knew with both parents in their house did not love their lives. But he said he did, and he felt full. And that fullness was not given to him by having a man in the house. It came from community, from abundance, from not being raised inside of a deficit model of love. I don't know if you're still here, if you sat here this long, that maybe it starts to feel uncomfortable to realize that maybe this wasn't just your life, but a role. Because sometimes when you see it, you can't go back. You can't go back. You can't say, well, survival gave you purpose. You can't keep confusing being exhausted as a virtue. The question should stop being, how do we fix this? Because fixing something that was never meant for you is the trap, and it keeps you inside the system. The question is, how do you stop feeding it? What do you stop carrying that was never yours? What do you stop building your life around? What would you say no to if you didn't believe that you'd have to carry burdens? The system survives on participation. And I think this is where, when people talk about free will, this is where it should apply. The moment you stop participating, even small shifts can make everything change. Because Black motherhood does not have to mean sacrifice. It does not have to mean survival. It can mean joy, boundaries, and choice. It can mean being a person first and not a function. And that type of shift can be generational if we are intentional. Because the moment a mother or any woman stops being a vessel for struggle, she becomes an example of something else, something unfamiliar and something that the patriarchy fears. Black women have been so focused on trying to be noticed in the system that they have not taken advantage of how going unseen can change your life. Black women were never meant to save the system. And the moment we stop trying is the moment something new actually has a chance to exist. Guys, if you haven't already, go ahead, subscribe to my channel. I look forward to this discussion in the comments, so ciao ciao for now.